now coming into the plant of the day, which I'm going to preface with a little short story, if I may, bro,
Yeah.
about why this plant is in today's show. And the plant is mullein, which has many names, which I'm sure you're going to share with us in a minute. But this is a plant that is a biennial, only lives for 2 years and only flowers in the second year with a sort of an amazing, well, it's kind of a rod, I guess you could call it. And when I learned first about this plant was with my plant spirit teacher, Pam Montgomery, many years ago, and she always connected it to the crown chakra. So anyway, roll forwards to our recent travels, and we were with one of our tribe members up in Dallas recently on our journeys, and wonderful lady with a beautiful garden, growing medicinal plants and serving her community and everything else. And I commented to her, I said, "Oh, you've got some wonderful, mullein plants over there on the lawn. There's only, a couple of them." And I said, "It's strange. Whenever I've seen mullein growing in the wild, I've only ever seen two, maybe three at the most. I've never seen them growing in stands or en masse." And she just chuckled, said, "Oh, well, I don't think I have either, really, but who knows?" Anyway, so roll forward 3 days and rolling into the mountains of New Mexico, and what do I see? Swaves of mullein growing everywhere, and it was the plant that literally was forcing its way into my awareness every single day during our trip round the mountains and deserts of New Mexico. And I'm like, I've never seen this much mullein in my entire life. I do grow it in the garden, but not anything like this. I mean, it literally growing everywhere. And I was like, why is this plant suddenly in my awareness right now? And, just looping back to some of what I said earlier, is I feel that it's because we need, or the population en masse needs to be reconnected at the crown and the soul star chakras with this incredible sword of light. So that's how I'm just going to set this one up, bro, before I hand over to you to talk a little bit more about this plant from your perspective.
I love that, the sword of light, and I can only envy the vistas that greeted you on your travels. To see that much mullein growing all in one location, I think must be absolutely fantastic.
It
The nearest
was.
I've come to that is this year when I was spending a lot of time in the Cambridge University Botanic Garden, where they also have a lot of mullein. They have a whole plantation in the order beds, i.e. the beds where they put the various plant families and they put all the plants in the same family together. Now, mullein is a plant that I'm very, very, very familiar with from herbal medicine as well. But I've also grown it myself. We have a plant in our garden. It's a biennial, which means
Mhm.
that it actually comes up every 2 years. So you might think it's gone away, if you have it in your garden, and then it'll come up the following year, which is quite an interesting one. And that, I don't know, that might be one reason why there's suddenly a lot where you never saw any before as well. But in
Mhm.
the botanic garden, it's sort of spread as well. It's growing in all sorts of little places. There's certainly growing a lot in the rock garden, which is the area, a lovely little area just around the lake. And it is a beautiful plant, and it's incredibly imposing, isn't it? I mean,
It is.
salt light is a very, very good description. It can have branches as well. It can almost look like a candelabra of swords in some cases as well. Now, in herbal medicine, we mainly use it for the respiratory tract and the ear, nose, and
Yeah.
throat region, where it has a mucilage content in the leaves particularly, which is very good for soothing the throat if you've got a sore throat or something like that, soothing the mucous membranes. I find it very useful for conditions like hay fever and any kind of irritation of the upper respiratory tract passages. It's very well known for mullein oil, infused oil of mullein flowers, because we also use the flowers
Right.
as a remedy for earache, particularly in small children. But for anybody, I've used it in my own case. I picked up an ear infection some years ago. Mullein was very, very useful in helping me to deal with that. In that context, it's an important part of a very well-known herbal formulation by the late great Dr. Christopher, who called it B&B formula, and the B&B stand for black and blue cohosh, which are different plants, but
Yeah.
the cohosh plants plus lobelia were half of the formula, and the other half was 50% mullein oil. So mullein oil is also really, really good for any kind of ear problems, any kind of massaging on the external. If you've got swollen glands in and around the neck, for example, it is a plant that's very much associated with that part of the body. and also with sort of clearing out the nasal passages as well. And I wonder whether that, in some senses, renders it a good, a plant to think about in terms of clearing the head
Mm.
area generally, prior perhaps to being able to connect through the crown chakra as well. I don't know whether there might be a resonance there, because it seems to me that, I don't know about you, but when you're all blocked up in your sinuses, for example, and you're not feeling very comfortable, you're feeling stuffy, you can't really get much of a signal, if I could put it that way, from the cosmos. And I think that mullein might be a plant that sort of enables that, simply by clearing out those very, very important passages in which, interestingly enough, I've just been writing a book on my second book on iridology. The first one's about to be published a little bit later this month.
Yeah, we're
And
going to talk about that, I think, before the end of
yeah,
the show. Yeah.
yeah, sure. We'll flag it up a little bit. Yeah, but in how can I explain this in super quick terms? Uh, the sort of portions of the iris which are dedicated to particular organs, and my exploration of the iris in this new book is going to be about the energetics, really, and about the resonances. And I'm using that word deliberately because the area that that is assigned in the iris to the upper respiratory tract, to the nose, to the sinuses, frontal sinuses, etc. I've actually called it the zone of resonance, or the domain of resonance. And what I mean by resonance is that sort of feeling of, yeah, that feels good, that sounds right. When you're checking things out, are they true? Are they not true? And again, resonance has that sort of, connection with the voice as well. Is your voice resonating? Does it sound real? Does it sound as though it's coming from a place of authenticity? And I think this is kind of quite an important concept. And I always think of mullein when I actually want something that's going to sort of clear any congestion out of that area. And almost, it's not quite crown chakra, but it almost clears the area around the third eye, if you like, as well, so that you can just perceive things a little bit more clearly. It's also very good, by the way. I thought of mentioning it a few moments ago when we were talking about the old COVID, because I was using a lot of mullein in that situation as well. It was also very, very good for clearing the lungs. But those are the kind of herbal associations that I have with mullein.
Mm. Yeah, thank you for that, bro. I'm just going to add in a few other bits and pieces, and then maybe we can try and extrapolate some further information. So the plant is called Verbascum tapis, or thapis, I guess, in Latin.
Thapsus,
And
yeah,
yeah, thapsus, that's it. And it's a member of the figwort family. And
that's right.
the word mullein actually comes from the French Mullein or Mullein, from the Latin mollis, meaning soft. And of course,
Often, that's right.
our good old friend Lady's Mantle is a mollis too, I think, right?
Well, the name, yeah, the name mollis, that's the binomial, the species name mollis. In the case
Yes,
of lady's mantle, says the same thing. It's softening,
yes,
because lady's mantle also has a lot of mucilage.
right.
They're not from the same family. Lady's mantle, of course, is from the
No,
rose
no, not
family.
at all. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, you're right. That's the root of the word, softening, and that's the mucilage content that I was talking about.
Right, exactly. And the plant does have many names. The one that you showed me the other day is probably one of the more common ones, Aaron's
Absolutely,
rod.
Aaron's rod.
But it's
Yeah,
also been called Jupiter's staff or Jacob's staff. And interestingly, sometimes it also goes by the name of the bullock lungwort, because it's been used for treating cattle who have, I think, respiratory conditions. So yeah, very much a plant that's to do with respiratory issues and to do with ENT, ear, nose, and throat, which I think is interesting. This is probably more your part of the territory. I was reading that the plant is antiviral, anti-tumor,
yeah,
antifungal, and antibacterial, all of which we're still very much questioning from a quantum perspective in terms of what these antivirals mean.
right.
But it's also very high in the vitamin B contingent, 2, 5, 6, and 12, and also a bit of vitamin D. So it's a plant that has a lot to offer. And aside from being very striking to look at, because it's very unique, right? I mean, how many other plants really look like mullein, with its leaves close to the base, and then this very tall, erect rod. And I'm sure we can have a lot of fun with that one. But that's how it looks, right? And it can be used as a torch. You can dip the flowers in some sort of oil and then use it as a torch. But from an energetic point of view, I do really feel that this plant is connecting us to some sort of lightsaber, almost our sword of light, that's or Michael's sword of light that connects us from the 3D to the heavenly realms. And this plant actually has, from the point of view of the witches' grimoires, has a history and tradition of being able to protect against bad spirits and even against lightning, which I thought was interesting. It has a strong connection to Mercury, actually, because the plant is associated with fire. So just some other bits and pieces to share before I get your feedback on that, bro. Apparently, I know that mullein can be smoked. It's one of the plants that you can do a smoke initiation with, like our good old friend Lady Mugwort. But the seeds are highly poisonous, and I was reading that Native Americans actually use those to paralyze fish there, so they're easier to catch, which is interesting. But also this one I like a lot because it speaks to me of its spiritual qualities. This is a plant that can help replenish the soil in our own life as well as in the ground outside. And in doing so helps us connect to the ancestors, because like you said, the seeds can fall and remain dormant for 100 years or more even, and so they're obviously highly resilient, but as they grow in the soil, they're actually able to they like growing in disturbed soils, actually, like a bit like mugwort actually, and part of their job is to draw up minerals from the depths and then drop them back onto the topsoil so that other seeds can grow, including their own. So this is a plant that speaks to me of regeneration and recycling somehow, and revitalizing both the terroir or the terrain of the human field, but also that of our garden and our environment. So I just wanted to throw those in because I think they're interesting, more spiritual side to this plant.
Absolutely, and I think your the doctrine of signatures would definitely support the flaming sword of St. Michael. I
Right.
love that. I've never thought of that. I've always been very impressed by the plant and very drawn to it, without ever really knowing that. So I'm super interested to hear all of that. Now I was just checking just now because a number of plants in the family to which mullein belongs, the Scrophulariaceae, or
Right.
figwort family, as you said, have crossed over recently, because another very famous member of that plant, of course, is foxglove, Digitalis purpurea. And a
Right.
number of plants actually have crossed over now, and they're members of the Plantaginaceae family. And I was just checking to see that mullein hasn't crossed over, and indeed it doesn't seem to have. At the moment, it's still in the Scrophulariaceae. But the reason these things happen, of course, in case you don't know, anybody out there, is that they're sort of reclassifying plants according to DNA these days. It was always done according to morphology, the shape of the
Yeah.
leaf, the shape of the seeds, the number of seeds, the number of carpels, etc., etc. Now it's done by DNA, which is supposedly more accurate. So a number of plants have crossed over. That is not one of them. So we are still in the Scrophulariaceae. And I just wanted to mention that because scrofula, of course, is a form of tuberculosis. And so that whole ability of the plant to sort of dispel disease in that way,
Yeah.
dispel microbes and unhelpful influences, is clearly part of its chemistry and part of its traditional use as well.
Yeah, and I think that perhaps this is another reason why this plant has come into my awareness. It's a plant for this time of year, right? Because it does deal with
Totally.
chest
Yeah.
congestion, colds,
Yeah.
TB, flu, pneumonia, and sore throat. All of those things that can affect us at this time of year. And as our world becomes increasingly unstable and unpredictable on all fronts, including the weather, which is maybe a topic for another day, it feels like this is a good plant to help us at this time. So, for our audience's benefit, bro, how would you prescribe taking this medicine? What would be your preferred delivery method?
I really like the tea made of the flowers. It's quite fragrant. It's very soothing. It's very good if you've got a sore throat. The leaves are a little rougher. You can still use them. They're fine as well. But I really have a soft spot for the flowers. The tincture is also very good, and I think that it goes very well into a sort of a general cough chest formula as an ingredient in that. If you want to use it as, I think I'm very intrigued by the idea that you could use it for smudging in the same way that you might use mugwort. I think I'm definitely going to try that. I've
No,
never
for
done it.
smoking, dude, not smudging, smoking.
Smoking.
You
Oh,
could
okay.
maybe you could smudge it, but yeah, no,
Well, I don't know. I don't know. But maybe that was just my intuition that maybe it might be good for that as well. Because
could be.
I do a lot of smudging. Actually, I was, yeah, I had a couple of really super powerful experiences within the last few years that taught me how powerful smudging is. Because smoke basically gets everywhere. and it doesn't leave anything out. It gets into all the nooks and crannies. You've got something you don't want, any, whether it's a bad smell or a bacterial or whatever, it'll deal with it. And we use it all the time. So I think, I think I'm going to try smudging with Mullein and just see what happens. And I might try smoking as well. But then, as I've also mentioned, of course, the oil. I always have mullein oil available because it is so useful, especially if you've got kids around. I don't anymore, as it happens, but when we used to have mullein oil for the ears, kids' ears particularly, very, very susceptible. And of course, the ears, just to put this in little energetic resonance in there. And I wonder about this because I wonder about, I'm now starting to wonder about Mullein as an adaptogen. I might do a little bit of work on that and see if I can make a case for it, because of course the ears are the external location, if you like, energetically, the opening on the skin of the kidney. And I'm wondering whether there might be some kidney resonance with Mullein as well. That's something for me to look into.
Yeah, thank you both for all of that. And just for audience's benefit, do you happen to have any Mullein medicine in your cabinet if people are feeling inclined to get some?
I have a limited amount of tincture. I have only enough oil for our own purposes at the moment, but if any, we can always get it, put it that way.
Right, good to know. And actually, I was reading in preparation for this call today that if you do decide to make a tea with the leaves, it's a good idea to strain it through a coffee paper filter because of the fine hairs on the leaf. Which, if you look at, I mean, they're wonderful leaves, right? I mean, you can use them for all kinds of things. If you get caught short out in nature, it makes for something really good to make sure that you can pull your pants back up without fear of making a mess. And it's also good for using as a bandage because of the leaves. It's very similar to what we might call the plant lamb's ears, right? Is it lamb's ears?
Yeah. It's a bit rougher than lamb's ears because it's a bit more like comfrey actually. And you do a poultice with straight comfrey leaves, and it is going to hurt. It's very abrasive. And mullein leaves are similar. They are a little bit abrasive. So yeah, you're right. Soften it down a lot, and make sure if you're making a tea out of it, use a fine strainer. But preferably, actually, use the flowers. If you're making a tea, it's much more pleasant.
Yeah, my guess is that in most places the flowers have gone over by now. I mean, I was seeing a few with flowers still up in the mountains of New Mexico, but mostly they were going to seed. And of course, the other one thing about the mullein is it just produces so many seeds, which is why I've always pondered why I'd never seen these huge stands until now. I'm just like, surely, I think that any flowering mullein must have probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of seeds once the flowers have gone to seed. I mean, just a ridiculous amount. And I always wondered why there wasn't more growing in stands. And I'm thinking now maybe that the intelligence of the plant only releases the seeds to grow according to how much is needed, and the rest just stay dormant in the soil for a later date when they'll need to come back, maybe when the soil needs refurbishing again. So this is another mark of the intelligence of this plant, and maybe speaks of storing seeds for another time, maybe. And maybe that's some of its energetic quality is helping us to keep, how to say, the seed bank full for another day. And we can use that metaphor, I think, in different ways. But I'm also wondering, looping back to the crown chakra and soul star chakra, without going into it too much in this piece, both myself and Bella were somewhat dismayed to find that we had something lodged in our soul star chakras for a few weeks that was actually really preventing us from having our full connection to the divine energy, and was slowly, actually, as we realized after we'd removed that particular energetic device in our soul star chakra, that it was actually sort of making us feel not ourselves, and we weren't able to hit our full notes of happiness, and perhaps, I wouldn't say feeling depressed, but definitely not feeling at our peak performance. And I'm thinking back to what I said earlier about seeing large chunks of the population being in the same way, and I'm thinking that perhaps that's part of what's happened over the last 2 years, maybe, is that connection at the crown and soul star chakra to the higher realms has either got disconnected, hijacked, or switched off. And I've talked before about the experience of the grey world and what that feels like, and what it would be like for for there to be huge soul loss. It would feel like being in a grey world where there isn't an awful lot of point to anything. And I'm definitely sensing that there is an element of the collective that is in that place. And I'm thinking that maybe this is a plan that can help bring back the light of the flaming sword of Archangel Michael.
Good thought, bro. I'm going to have a deep think about that. And I might actually even journey with that plant now that it's come up. You're right to suggest, of course, the flowers are completely over. I mean, they are here; they've been over for months. But
Yeah.
you have a good herbal supply. You should be able to get some still.
Yeah, and just one final thought I just want to bring in before we wrap up for today. This is also the that in the old days offerings of this herb were made to I'm going to see if I can get its pronunciation right. San Fiacre of Bruil, a Irish monk back in the 7th century, and offerings were made to this particular saint, who is the patron saint of gardeners and medicinal plants. So I didn't know that. This is coming from the Cider's Concise Guide to Magical Plants, which has lots of these little tidbits in it. A good book. But that's an interesting one, and I'm going to investigate that guy a little bit more because I'd never heard of him before. Do you have any intel on him, dude?
No, I haven't. No, I don't have any intel about that, and I know a lot of the Irish guys. But no,
Right.
interesting. I'd be interested to hear what you come up with.